Okay, today we are going to start Siman Tafresh Ayin Hey, which is a new Siman, and this is actually directly going to relate to what we're learning in Hilchos Shabbos. We took a break for learning about Chanukah and Siman Reish Samach Gimel, and the topic is Hadlaka Oisa Mitzvah versus Hanacha Oisa Mitzvah, which basically means is the mitzvah in the physical act of lighting or of the placement of the menorah or the placement of on Shabbos when we light the wicks slash candles. Is it the actual placement? And we're going to see there are going to be numerous halachic ramifications based on which way we hold. So the Gemara, the source of where this all starts is the Gemara in Shabbos on Chav Beis Amid Beis. The Gemara over here asks the question, Ibaya lahu, hadlacha oise mitzvah or hanacha oise mitzvah? Is the actual lighting the mitzvah or the placement, the placing of the menorah the mitzvah? Tosfos over here says the nafkamina, the halachic practical difference would be im hedelika chashav, which stands for cheresh shoyte v'koton ohenicha. Let's say if someone who was deaf or mentally challenged or a minor lit the menorah, and we would hold havaka oisa mitzvah, the lighting is the mitzvah, then we would not fulfill the obligation. However, if we hold hanacha oisa mitzvah, placing it as the mitzvah, then even if one of these individuals who was not obligated, not able to halachically light the menorah, lit it, it's fine. All you have to do is pick it up and then place it down, then it would be fine. So that is one difference off the bat that Tosfos points out. Rashi speaks out the difference. Habako is a mitzvah versus hanacho is a mitzvah. So the Gemara begins by quoting a brayso. The brayso says, "Tashma da Amar Rava hayatofish ne'er Chanukah v'oimed lo asav v'loi klum." If a person was holding the menorah the entire time when it was lit and standing, he didn't do anything. It didn't count. I have in my notes over here, the Sfas Emes is quoted by saying, we see that a person cannot be stagnant, he can't be stationary, he always has to be growing. He can't be standing, so to say. I have it in my notes. I don't know where I heard it. I don't know where I saw it. It's not on the Sfas Emes on his commentary in the Gemara, because I just looked it up. Not here. Anyways, um, so you didn't do anything, says the Gemara. Shema Mina, what do we see? Hanocha oitze mitzvah. We see that placing it is the mitzvah. Because since the menorah, the Gemara is entertaining the possibility in the Hava Min over here, the Gemara, is that since you didn't physically place it, consequently, the mitzvah will not count. The Gemara says, no. Really, I could tell you, Havaka is a mitzvah that lighting it is the mitzvah. Why then would this individual not fulfill his obligation if he was holding it? Simple. Hosam haroyo oimer l'sorchuhu denokelo. Someone who is seeing what is happening will come to the incorrect conclusion that he lit it for his own personal needs. That's why he lit the menorah and he was holding it, not for Chanukah per se. So therefore, it comes out that we have two ideas right now what we're holding. Number one, the idea we didn't knock off either way that it cannot be going halakha is a mitzvah or hanacha is a mitzvah. We didn't say either way that it has to be going like one. But what we do see is this idea is a person is not allowed to light in a manner in which others would believe that he is just lighting the menorah for his own personal needs, aka that he is not lighting it for pursuing needs to publicize the Chanukah miracle. So there's a problem of what we call marasai. That's what we see so far, thus far in the Gemara.
Why? Okay, sorry.
What's the question?
Why would if you see a menorah, right, and you see specifically it's a menorah, not like a torch or a flashlight or anything like that, right? And the guy's holding it. Why would you even think, and we know that you're not allowed to use the light,
He's gonna say he just that's what was handy. That what was next to them. You have to keep in mind, thousands of years ago they didn't have light bulbs, electricity, etc. So he just lit something that was closest to him, and then he moved it closer to where he was. He's using it for his own needs.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Rashi says this fellow that was holding it biyodoi hayatovish. Rashi says biyodoi mehshalika hachikaf. So he was holding it the whole time until it was extinguished. V'oimed, the Gemara says that he was holding it, And the Gemara says that he was standing. Where is this in the Gemara? The oimid, he was standing. Who cares if he was standing or sitting? Says Rashi, you're right. Lav dafka, lakein loshen hashas. Doesn't mean necessarily that he was standing. Means that he was holding it the whole time. L'sarcho, it's for his own needs. L'shtamesh v'leka heker nisa. There it is, fellas. He was just lighting it to use it for his own needs, and there's no recognition of the miracle over here. So therefore, it's going to be a problem. Says the Gemara, attempt number 2 to prove if halakha is a mitzvah or hanacha is a mitzvah. Or hanacha is the mitzvah. Placing it or lighting it. Toshmo, come and listen. The Yamaravo hedlika bifnim v'hoitzio loyoso klum. If a person lit the menorah inside and then he brought it outside, he didn't do anything. It didn't even count. So we see from over here the idea that if you lit it inside and then brought it outside, it's no good. You cannot change the domain of where it is located. We have to categorize what is a reshus, what is a domain. We'll come back to that. Iyamar B'Shleima says the Gemara, if you're going to say it's good hadlaka, he said mitzvah. If we're going to say the actual lighting is the mitzvah, the etzem maisa of the hadlaka, the physical act of lighting is the mitzvah. So now it makes sense. If you brought it outside, you didn't do anything. Because hadlaka, yamar pishlem hadlaka is a mitzvah, hadlaka b'makayma b'ina, it needs to be lit in its place, in its location. It needs to be lit. Mishum hachilos of lokum. That's why if you moved it, you didn't do anything. In other words, we're gonna learn more about this. When we say hadlaka is a mitzvah, the lighting is the mitzvah. It doesn't mean you could just light it and then move it wherever you want. You can't. It has to be lit in a location that it's going to remain in that location, and it's going to be able to remain a flame for a duration of minimally 30 minutes after 3 stars come out. Seitzach uchavim. That's what hadlaka is a mitzvah requires. Furthermore, if you're going to move it, you have to worry that someone's going to say, like we just saw in the Gemara, someone's going to say, oh, he's just using it for his own needs. Continuing the Gemara, if you're going to see the placing it as the mitzvah, why didn't you do anything? You lit the menorah inside, you picked it up, and then you moved it outside, or vice versa. Right? You lit the menorah outside and you brought it inside. The Gemara actually, by the way, purposely says you lit the menorah inside and then removed it outside. Because back then they used to only light outside. Whole discussion why that changed. That's another topic in and of itself. In Israel, they still light it outside. That's why the Gemara specifically inside to outside. But anyways, if you're going to say that the halacha is in accordance with the idea of hanacha is a mitzvah, so you placed it. Why did you do anything? So the Gemara answers, now really, I could also tell you hanacha is a mitzvah. The reason why it wouldn't work over there, even though you placed it, someone who's going to see you is going to say that he lit it for his own needs. And therefore, we're back to that issue. So we see that this is a serious concern. Ad kedei kach, to the extent that the Gemara reused the answer that it used before. Just it's the reverse way. Before we were trying to prove hanacha is a mitzvah. Now we're trying to prove hadlaka is a mitzvah. The Gemara in both scenarios use this answer of, no, someone who's going to see the situation is going to say that, oh, he's just using it as for his own needs. So far, we have a clear idea of the two different opinions as to whether we hold hadlaka is a mitzvah or hanacha is a mitzvah, the lighting is the mitzvah or the placement. And in addition to this, we have the idea of someone is going to come along and saying that it's just lit for your own needs. And that's a legitimate concern that we need to contend with. The Gemara says, the Rashi says in the bottom, commenting on this brisa and the Gemara's analysis of this brisa, which is if you're going to say that lighting is the mitzvah, that's why you didn't do anything when you brought it from inside to outside. Says Rashi, the kevan dezoihi mitzvasa, sarich shetase b'makom chiyuva. There it is. That since this is the mitzvah, it needs to be done in a place which is an obligation. So it has to be done in a place that you're obligated in. Continuing the Gemara, yep. We're good before we continue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now here's where the Gemara gets very difficult. Because there's a lot to contend with on this one. Toshma. Come and listen. The Omar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi comes along and says, Ashashis, if you have glass. Shahai sedalekes v'hoileches kol hayoim kulo. Let's say you have a type of lantern. Rashi says, Kli gadol shazachuchas, a big vessel made out of glass. So you have a lantern over here. And let's say it was doilekes. It was lit and it continued being aflame the entire day. Kol hayom kulo, the entire day. Lemoitzi Shabbos. Mechava umadliko. After Shabbos and Motzi Shabbos, Saturday night, extinguish it and then relight it. Why does the Gemara specifically pick a case of this was lit the entire Shabbos? Why can't it be lit the entire day? And then next night comes, you need to extinguish it and relight it. Why specifically Shabbos?
Is everything?
What'd you say, Aaron?
He's asking if what I print. If he's asking if this is everything. He said this is everything.
What do you mean it's
Oh,
everything?
nothing. No gay this year. Maybe it was. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's something else.
Comes along the Masifta and footnote Bays on this page and says the same exact halacha would be if it was lit the entire day. Why did the Gemara pick a case that it was lit before Shabbos and it remained aflame the entire Shabbos? Simple. If this happened on a weekday, no one would allow the candle to be lit, the wick to remain aflame the entire day. People would extinguish it. You don't need light during the day like that. You got the sun. You're not going to want to waste money on lighting your oil. Oh, however, on Shabbos, where it's prohibited to extinguish, machave, it's one of the 39 malachos. Now comes along the Chedushi Maharam Bint and says, oh, that's why this is going to happen on Shabbos. It's more likely. Can't extinguish on Shabbos. Says the Gemara over here. Iyamar Bishlama Hadlaka is a mitzvah shapir. If you're gonna say that the hadlaka is the mitzvah, the lighting is the mitzvah, we easily understand this halacha. Why? Because it has to be lit properly. It has to be lit for Chanukah. Now, what's very interesting over here is Rashi on the second one says Dailekis. Rashi says Shehedliko lemitzvah snare Chanukah b'erev Shabbos. You lit it for the mitzvah of Chanukah on erev Shabbos. That's what Rashi over here says, which is a very interesting idea. In other words, if you're gonna say that lighting it is a mitzvah, this makes sense. All you need to do is extinguish it and then relight it. The Gemara doesn't say that you need to pick it up and then place it back down. So that's why it's a proof that halakha is a mitzvah. Are we good before we continue?
Yes.
Yep.
Now here's where things get spicy. Ella, Iyamar hanacha is a mitzvah. If you're going to say that placing it is a mitzvah, hay machavu madlika? Why did the Gemara say you have to extinguish it and then relight it? Mechava umagbia umanichu madlika mebayale. The Gemara should have said you extinguish it, pick it up, place it down, and then relight it. In other words, if you're going to hold that placing it as a mitzvah, you would need to just extinguish it, pick it up, put it down, and relight it. Now the question is, why would you need to relight it? That's the question that everyone should be bothered by in this Gemara. If you hold hanacha is a mitzvah, just Pick it up and put it down, and then you fulfill your obligation of the mitzvah. And that perhaps could be what Rashi's alluding to. When Rashi said you lit it Erev Shabbos for the mitzvah of Chanukah, so now all you have to do is pick it up, put it down. By the way, why can't you light just once? Put a tremendous amount of oil in there, and then you the next night you don't even light again. Just keep the oil going. It's enough oil to last for 8 days. Could you do that? Why can't you? Well, we're going to be learning about that on this siman that we're learning now. Very relevant question. Be a lot easier also. Says Rashi, you lit it Erev Shabbos, before Shabbos, and you had in mind it's going to count for Chanukah. So the question on this Gemara is, wait a second. Why do you need to extinguish it and then relight it? Just pick it up, put it down. Hold that question, we'll come back to it. Says the Gemara, second kasha, v'oid midakol milvarchinon, from the fact that the text of the bracha is Asher Kiddushan b'mitzvah Yisav Tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. The text of the bracha that we recite, one of the three brachos, or one of the two, if it's not the first night, and we already said Shechianu, is Brachat Hashem l'kinam al Asher Kiddushan b'mitzvah Tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Lahadlik, you see that it's in the text of the bracha, to light. Shmami, no, we can infer from here, Hadlaka is a mitzvah, Shmami, no, we can infer from here that the lighting is the mitzvah, and that's the conclusion of the Gemara. Hadlaka oise mitzvah, the lighting it is the mitzvah. A few points. Number one, Nusach Sfard attack over here. Eidut HaMizrach attack. You see that the text of the Gemara is Lahadlik Ner. What's the next word?
Shel Chanukah, very good. Yeah.
Oh, good point. Could have overlooked that one easily. Not on our watch. Number two, what's the text of the bracha on Shabbos?
Lahadlik ner shel Shabbos.
Oh, lahadlik. We're gonna see that's why they say also by Shabbos Yom Tov, lahadlik ner shel Shabbos, lahadlik ner shel Yom Tov. That's how we know that we're gonna hold hadlaka is a mitzvah also by Shabbos and by Yom Tov, not just Chanukah. In the text of the bracha, like the Gemara is saying over here. Then the Gemara says, wait, before we continue, let's see the first taisvus on the top, Levim timer. Why do you need to extinguish it, return, and then relight it? Just pick the thing up if you hold Hanachois mitzvah, placing it as a mitzvah. Kevan Hanachois mitzvah, if you're going to hold Hanachois mitzvah, before the Gemara came to the conclusion that it's Halachois mitzvah, lighting is the mitzvah. If you're holding that the placing is the mitzvah, all you got to do is pick it up, put it down. Doesn't you gotta the luka v'amedis me'alach acher shot v'katan. Is it going to be worse if it was already lit than if it was lit by someone who was deaf, mentally challenged, or a minor? Just like in those cases, as we saw in the first small Tosfos starting this topic, if one of those individuals lit it and you hold Hanachos the mitzvah placing the mitzvah, all you have to do is pick it up and put it back down. So over here, all you have to do if it was lit the entire time, like we saw in the first line of the Gemara over here, if the glass, if it was lit the entire time in a glass type of lantern situation, so all you have to do is extinguish it and then relight it. I don't understand. Why did the Gemara say, wait a second, you have a problem if you hold Hanacha mitzvah. Why do you have to extinguish it and relight it? You would have to extinguish it, pick it up, put it down, and relight it. What do you mean? Says Taisus. If you hold Hanacha mitzvah, places a mitzvah, the Gemara should have said, instead of Ashasha Shaitza Delechas Velechas Kol Hayom Kulo Motzi Shabbos Mechavu Madlika, it should have said Ashasha Shaitza Delechas Velechas Kol Hayom Kulo Magbiu Manicha. Pick it up and put it down. You hear the kasha?
Yes.
This is the question that we asked
well,
the Gemara. So Taisva says, Yesh Loimar, the Mairi Shadlika Mitachilos Lasar Shabbos. Here's the machloikis, the argument between Rashi and Taisvus. Says Taisvus, no, you never lit this for the sake of Chanukah, you lit it for Shabbos. And that's why it's worse than if it was lit by someone who is deaf, someone who is foolish, mentally challenged, or a minor. The Hossam Shemadlika Ba'ata Nikar Hadavar Shumadlika L'Shem Chanukah. Because over there, where you're lighting it right now, it's recognizable that you're lighting it for Chanukah. In other words, when someone lit it, albeit he wasn't a person who was halachically fit to light it, such as Chashav, Perish Chotav, someone who was deaf, mentally challenged, or a minor, at least he lit it for the sake of Chanukah. And therefore, if you're going to hold Hanachos the mitzvah, placing it is the mitzvah, all you have to do is pick it up and put it down, because it was lit for Chanukah. However, explains Tosfos arguing on Rashi in this scenario, if it was lit for Shabbos, now it's going to require double dipping. Now you're going to have to not just extinguish it and rekindle it if you hold Hanachos mitzvah. You're not just going to have to, excuse me, you're not just going to have to pick it up and then place it down, but rather you're going to have to extinguish it and additionally relight it because it wasn't lit with the intention of Hanukkah in mind at all. The next Taisus then points out another nafkamina, another practical halachic ramification as to whether you hold that placing it is the mitzvah or lighting it. You're allowed to light from one candle to another candle. This is actually going to be the previous siman Tafrei Shayin Dalid. This is talking about if you're not using the shamish. You're allowed to light, says Taisvus, one candle to the other. Because hadlaka oisa mitzvah. We're going to have to learn more about that now in the previous siman after we do this siman Tafrei Shayin Hey. Umikol makom kevan shenagu oilam lahachmirim lashana siman. But says Taisvus, since the custom is for people to be stringent on this, you should not change the custom and you should be stringent. Should be pointing out that the Ramban, in his commentary to this Gemara, in Dibur Amaskul Mandamr, on Chav Beis and Beis, as well as the Rashba and Dibur Amaskul Ha'amrin, I'm right. Even if we're going to say that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, in the case of Ashashus, the glass that was lit the entire day, from before Shabbos until after Shabbos, was lit, like Rashi said, for a menorah, for Ner Chanukah. Why is this hand up? How do you get this hand down?
It's not bothering me.
I know, but it's just like, why is it there? Yo, zoom, oh zoom, oh zoom. I don't even know what I'm doing over here. I don't even know how to do it.
What?
All right, I'll just stick to Torah, you know. Um, so even if we're gonna say, like Rashi, says the Ramban, says the Rashba, on Motzei Shabbos after Shabbos, you still need to extinguish it and then relight it. Even if you're gonna hold Hanacha is a mitzvah, placing it as a mitzvah. Because if you're not gonna return and relight it, someone who sees you is gonna say, "Oh, yesterday before Shabbos he lit it for his own needs, not for Hanukkah," and therefore explains the Rashba and the Ramban a little different answer than Taisvus. Someone is gonna say, "Oh, he just lit it for his own needs." And therefore would be worse than a chashav, a cheresh, shoit of a cotton, someone who is deaf, mentally challenged, or a minor. It would be worse than them, because at least they were lighting it at the time of the mitzvah for the sake of Chanukah, and it was recognizable that they're lighting it for Chanukah. Unlike over here, that's why this case could be halachically worse. Very interesting explanation. Says the Gemara in the continuation, this is going to be Sif Gimel of our Siman, Tafresh Ayin Hey, and this is why it's grouped together in the same Siman. You'd say, what does one halacha have to do with the other? And now we could easily understand. Says the Gemara continuing, V'hashta da'amrinon hadlacha oisa mitzvah. And now that we're saying that lighting it is the actual mitzvah, as opposed to placing it, the lighting is the mitzvah. Says the Gemara. Therefore, Hedlika cheresh shoyte v'katan lo yasav v'lo klum. If the menorah was lit by someone who was deaf, mentally challenged or a minor, they didn't do anything. It doesn't halachically count. Says the Gemara in the continuation, and this is a whole topic in and of itself. Isha vadai madlika. A woman certainly lights the menorah. The Amar Rebbe Yeshua ben Levi, famous Gemara in Shas, comes up in Psachim Kovchesam at Beis with the four koisos. Women are obligated to drink the 4 cups of wine on the Seder night. Similarly, it comes up in the Gemara in Megillah and Dalet Amud Aleph that Noshim, as we learned around 7 months ago, that women are obligated. Should say really 6 months ago. Women are obligated in Mikra Megillah, the Gemara says, and in the Gemara in Erechin, Dav Gimel, Amar Aleph Ayin Sham, comes up in numerous places. Isha Vadem Adlika Damir Yeshua ben Levi, same Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Noshim Chayovas ben Chanukah Fashafin Hayaboisanes. Women are obligated in the lighting of the menorah because they were also included in the miracle. We're going to learn more when we get to this in the actual halacha, in the Mishnah Berurah and the like, as to why they might not light if they have a husband. What would the reasons be for that? Mishnah Berurah is going to mention in a few places, so we're going to touch upon that. But the idea from this Gemara is that women are obligated to light the menorah. That's what we see from this. The question arises as to why would we think that they're not obligated? Rashi over here says, "Hayu ba'oisu anes shegozru yevonim al kol besulos hanesuos lihibol letafsir techila." It was decreed. The Greeks, they made a decree on all of the unmarried women who were getting married that they would have to first have relations with the officer of the Greek officer or general. Terrible. Value de isha nase hanes. And it was through a woman that the miracle occurred. Her name is none other than Yehudis. And they actually quote this in the, I just saw it right now, I already knew the name, but in the Mesoris Hashas Imo Safos, it says, look at Megillah's Tainus, look at the Ran, who says it's a story with Yehudis. So that's why the women are obligated because they brought about they are included in the miracle because the miracle happened through them. It should be pointed out the Sefer Hanoisin Imri Shefer, Parshas Vayeshev, quoted by the Mesivta and footnote Yud Gimel over here, says that the main idea of establishing these days of Chanukah is for which miracle? We had 2 miracles. We had the miracle of the Milchama, the war, and then we had the miracle of the oil, that the oil miraculously lasted longer. So the question is, what is Chanukah about? Why was it established? For which one? That's the Gemara. The truth of the matter is, we discussed. So why don't we say that the Greeks also wanted to assimilate them as well? Yeah, the Greeks wanted to do that to everyone. The Greeks wanted everyone not to keep the Torah, but specifically with this terrible decree, they did this, and therefore, what happened was when Yehudis killed this general, basically that was a major historic uh, movement of change of momentum of what happened, and that was very bad for them. So the major part of the Chanukah was caused from women. So comes the Sefer Hanoisin Imri Shefer and says, the truth of the matter is, a main miracle of Chanukah was the war. Right? It's because of the war, not because of the oil. It's just that the oil was there because people won't necessarily realize that how the military victory was all Hashem. However, the real miracle is the war. Rabbi miyad ma'atim, kibur miyad chaloshim, that it was a quintessential victory from the underdog. The few were victorious over the many. The weak were victorious over the mighty. That's the Jews, of course, were victorious. And therefore, even though women have nothing to do with the miracle with the oil. They have nothing to do with the nace of the shemen, the pach shemen. They're not obligated to light the menorah in the base of Mikdash. Nevertheless, they're still obligated to light the menorah on Chanukah or to have their husband light on their behalf, which we'll be learning about more. Why? Because they're included in the Nes Milchama, in the victory from the war and the military success. So that is just an interesting twist on this. Just to end with nothing Hanukkah related, but the question is, why do we need to even obligate them in the 4 cups of wine if and why don't we need to obligate them a matzah? So matzah, the Gemara says in Mem Gimel and Psachim, anyone who's not allowed to eat chametz has to eat matzah. So since women aren't allowed to eat chametz, they have to eat matzah, but that's only to matzah. So therefore, we need another connection with the 4 cups of wine, and we see clear from these Gemaras. It's also discussed that even though these mitzvahs are rabbinic in nature, the midrabanan, aka the 4 cups of wine, the Megillah on Purim, on Chanukah, the menorah. Nevertheless, still, since it would be time bound, we know the first parak in Kedushin discusses mitzvah shezman gam anashim beturos on chavtes over there. So since it's a time bound mitzvah, women are exempt. So even though these are time bound and even though they're rabbinic, still they would be exempt had it not been for this statement of Rabbi Yeshua and Levi that they're included in the miracle. Additionally, another idea is that women are really obligated in all of Hilchos Shabbos because we know we have a Gemara in Brachos Tav Chofs that says, by the way, that Gemara in Psachim, if you want to see, it's Kol Yishnu bebal tochacham, it's Yishnu be'echel bekum achilas matzah, v'haninash yehol v'yishnu bal tochacham, it's Yishnu bekum achilas matzah. That's the Gemara in Psachim over there. However, there is the Gemara in Shabbos actually discusses women are obligated. The Gemara in Brachos Tav Chav says that women are obligated in all of Hilchos Shabbos because we have a Hekesh Zachar and Shamar Kol Yishnu b'shmira Yishnu b'zachir v'haninash yehol b'yishnu b'shmira Yishnu b'zachir, which means anyone who's obligated in the los assays, the passive mitzvahs of Shabbos, is obligated in the assays, the active mitzvahs of Shabbos. And these women, since they're obligated in the los assays and the passive mitzvahs of Shabbos, so too they're obligated in the assays, the active mitzvahs of Shabbos. So there's a Ran that we learned, if I'm not mistaken, Hilchos Shalosh Shuros or Lechem Mishnah, where the Ran's quoted in the Gemara in Shabbos, I think it's Kuf Yud Ches around there, Kuf Yud Zayin, where the Ran says that women are obligated in Lechem Mishnah on Shabbos in having 2 chalas because they were obligated in the miracle of the man. They were involved with that miracle. So it's an interesting Ran. What was wrong about the connection between Zachar and Shamar? So we discussed that more over there. But anyway, so this is a basic introduction to the Siman, which I think is very important to understand. So Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue with more. Everyone should have a wonderful day.
Oh,
Yeah, good stuff.
Shkoyach.
Good sugyus. All right.
looking forward to going right there.
Yeah, likewise. Have a wonderful day.
All right, have a good day.
There you go.